We now proceed to the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. May I hear a motion from the members of the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the minutes of the previous meeting.
Second,
So moved,
Mr. Chair.
Chairman. There's a motion to dispense and adopt the minutes of the previous meeting. There being duly seconded, there being no objection, we approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
Sa parte po ng Blue Ribbon Committee, ngayon ay babasahin naman natin ang minutes ng previous meeting.
Kaya move that we dispense the reading of the previous meeting. Also move, Mr. Chairman. Second.
There is a motion, duly seconded. Hearing no objections, motion is carried.
Sa parte po ito, una po sa lahat, nais namin magpasalamat sa ating mga kasama na natin dito ngayon. Wala po tayong resource persons, kundi ito po'y pag-approve ba ng ating committee report. I would like to recognize the members who are here with us, led by our chairman of the Committee of on Good Government and Public Accountability, Congressman John Kuya Alvarado, our Deputy Speaker Dan Fernandez, our Senior Deputy Majority Leader, and also Vice Chairperson of both Committees of Public Accounts and Good Government and Public Accountability, Congressman Boying Rimulya, and of course our esteemed colleague from the minority, very active participant not only in the hearings but also in the technical working group, the Honorable Stella Kimbo. May I request the committee secretary to recognize the members who are in Zoom right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your Honors, from the Committee on Public Accounts, we have the Honorable Federico Carrasco, the Honorable Ons Ciceledo, and the Honorable Eileen Graft. Also joining us are the Honorable Janet Garin and the Honorable Christopher Go. Yan.
Attorney Marivic of the Committee on Good Government Public Accountability.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chairperson. For the Committee on Good Government, we have the following members in attendance. We have Representative Edgar Sabasbas, Representative Ed Christopher Go, Representative Angelica Natasha Go, Representative Cesar Jimenez Jr., Representative Steve Godin Diana Bautista, and for our executive members, we have Deputy Speaker Godina Escudero, Minority Leader Joseph Stephen Paduano. We have also Deputy Majority on Solido and Senior Minority Leader Janet Karin.
Maraming salamat, Attorney Marivic Castillo of the Good Government and Public Accountability, and of course, Attorney Francis Tancho of the Committee on Public Accounts. Para po sa kanyang paunang salita, ang chairman po natin ng Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability, may recognize Chairman John Kuya Alvarado.
Maraming salamat, Chairman Defensor. Kami po sa Blue Ribbon Committee, kasama na po ng aking mga membro, lalong-lalo na po ng ating Vice Chairperson, Boying Rimulya, at ang aking co-chairperson, Mike Defensor, Deputy Speaker Dan Fernandez, ganun din Congresswoman Stella Kimbo at mga kasamang kinatawan via Zoom ay kaisa ng ating joint committee sa pagpapalabas ng katotohanan na patas sa panig ng mga membro ng PhilHealth, sa panig ng members of the board ng PhilHealth at sa mga ehekutibo ng PhilHealth. Ang nais po natin dito mapalabas ay ang pawang katotohanan na magkakaroon ng tunay na aksyon para sa ating gobyerno. Hindi po yung maghihiring tayo, sunod walang mapaparusahan. Maghihiring tayo, walang makakasuhan. Sa madaling salita, dito sa Blue Ribbon Committee, kasama po ng Committee on Public Accounts, hindi po tayo mag-grandstanding dito. Ilabas natin ang tama na balanse para sa lahat ng members involved, gayon na rin para sa kaalaman ng taong bayan, parang bawat tao, lalong-lalo na yung mga nagbabayad ng PhilHealth ay alam kung saan napupunta ang kanilang binabayad at kung ito ba ay secured o ito ay namamapya lamang. Ngayong araw po na to, marami pong magugulat sa ating mga committee report, pero hawakan po ninyo ang inyong puso at ang inyong dibdib. Lakasan po natin ang ating kalooban sapagkat isang araw ng mga pasabog ang mangyayari. Sa ating mga nanonood, wag po ninyo basta-basta bibitawan yung ating Facebook Live sapagkat marami po kayong matututunan sa araw na ito. I-like lang po at i-share ang page ng House of Representatives, gayon din po ng inyong Kuya Jonathan C. Alvarado. Chairman Mike.
Marami po salamat sa ating po mga kasama. Muli po magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Sa lahat po ng ating mga kababayan na nanonood sa ngayon, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Sa mga nagdaang panahon ay masusing tiningnan ng Committee ng Public Accounts at Committee ng Good Government at Public Accountability ang napakarami at masalimuot sa mga issue na bumabalot sa PhilHealth. Ang inyong abang lingkod kasama si Chairman John Alvarado, kasama mga miyembro ng komiteeng ito ay naglagak ng hindi kumulang 55 oras sa loob ng 9 na beses na pagdinig. Malalim ang aming pag-aaral sa mga isyong napag-usapan sa mga pagdinig na naganap. Kabilang dito ay ang usapin sa all case rates, ang interim reimbursement mechanism, ang bidding ng IT o information technology, ang mga compromise sa settlement of cases, ang kaso ni Dr. Mengita, ang paghati-hati ng accreditation fees, ang Accenture case at mga pinepeking koleksyon sa OFWs, at maging ang mga pag-aaral ng Commission on Audit. Ang lahat ng ito ay masusing hinimay at tiningnan kung ano ang naging problema at dapat maikaso at kung anong lehislasyon ang kinakailangan upang mainto ang katiwalian at may isaayos ang pangunahing mandato ng PhilHealth na magbigay ng tulong at kasiguruhan sa panahon ng may sakit at may pangangailangan. Noong unang isagawa ang batas ng PhilHealth taong 1995, ang pangarap nating lahat ay magkaroon ng siguro o health insurance system na kung saan pag nagkasakit tayo o sino man sa ating pamilya ay mayroon tayong sasandalan na makakatulong sa atin sa panahon ng kagipitan. Hindi may tatatwa na sa kalagayan ng pamilyang Pilipino na pagtayo o isang miyembro ng ating pamilya ang nagkasakit ay nababaon tayo sa utang. Nagsasanla ng ari-arian. At ang mas masama ay naghihintay na lamang ng kamatayan sa kadahilan ng wala tayong pambayad sa ating medikal na pangangailangan. Ang Philippine Health Insurance System ay ang dapat sanang kasagutan sa ating pangarap na magkaroon ng maayos na programang pangpinansyal na sa pagdating ng panahon, at ito na may ayaw nating mangyari, ay meron tutulong at sasaklolo sa atin. Maraming mga rekomendasyon ang pinagsamang komite sa mga dapat kasuhan. Ang mga paglabag sa administratibong alituntunin, paglibag sa revised penal code, kaso kaugnay sa graft and corruption, code of ethics of public officials at maging sa syndicated estafa at plunder. Walang pinili o iniwasan ang pinagsamang komite sa mga opisyal mula sa loob ng PhilHealth at maging sa kataas-taasang mga nanunungkulan sa ating pamahalaan. Sa mga kasong ito ay kabilang ang mga ospital at mga healthcare providers na nag-abuso sa pondo ng PhilHealth para lamang sa kita at pansariling interes. Importante na makita ng sambayanan ang malinaw, objektibo at walang kinikilingan ang kongresong ito sa pagpapatupad ng aming sinumpaang tungkulin bilang kinatawan ng sambayanang Pilipino. Sa mga pagdinig ay malinaw sa aming kolektibong pagkakaisa na dapat protektahan ang pondo ng PhilHealth. Mahalaga na ang pondong yan ay huwag manakaw at maaksaya sa kadahilanan na ito ay pondo ng mga miyembro at pondo na sa panahon ng pangangailangan ay nandyan para sa atin at sa ating mga minamahal sa buhay. Kabilang sa mga ginawa ay ang pagsasaayos ng legislasyon para sa ating mga OFWs. Minabuti naming amyendahan ang probisyon ng batas na ginagawang mandatory ang pagbayad ng ating mga bagong bayani na sadyang napakalaki at hindi makatarungan. Magsisimula sa 3% at magtatapos sa 5% sa kanilang buwanang sweldo na hindi naman nagkakaroon ng employer's counterpart at kailangan nilang bayaran ng buo. Hindi sila bibigyan ng clearance at papayagang umalis pag hindi nila buong babayaran ang perang ito. At meron pang 3% interest na penalty kada buwan pag sila ay hindi makabayad. Batay na rin sa panawagan ni Pangulong Duterte at ng Kongreso, ang mga probisyon pong ito ay tinanggal namin at babaguhin. Binibigyan din po ng sapat na kapangyarihan sa ilalim ng panukalang batas na PhilHealth Crisis Act upang ayusin ang koordinasyon ng PhilHealth na sa ngayon ay nasa pangunguna ni President Attorney Dan Tigueran. Magkakaroon ng reorganization, magtatanggal kung kinakailangan at kunin ang lahat ng records para kasuhan ang dapat kasuhan at maisaayos kagad ang institusyon ng PhilHealth. Kasama sa kapangyarihang yan ay ang emergency hiring ng mga abogado, actuarial, audit, at finance na sadyang kailangan upang agad masaayos ang buhay at direksyon ng PhilHealth. Nananawagan kami sa Senado na tingnan nila mga bagay na ito, batay na rin sa kanilang obserbasyon at rekomendasyon sa mga problemang bumabalot sa PhilHealth. Nais kong magpasalamat sa mga bubuo ng Technical Working Group, kabilang si Chairman Kuya John Alvarado, Minority Leader Benny Abante, at ngayon kasama po natin si Minority Leader Carps Paduano, Deputy Speaker Rodante Marcoleta, Deputy Speaker Dan Fernandez, Senior Deputy Majority Leader Boying Rimulya, from the Minority, Congresswoman Stella Kimbo, Congressman Ace Barbers, from the Minority, Congressman Ariel Kabatbat, at NUP President P.D. Barsada. Salamat din po sa lahat ng opisyalis at miyembro ng Committee on Public Accounts at ng Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability sa pakipagtulungan upang magkaroon ng maayos at malalim na diskusyon sa ating mga pagdinig. Opisyal na po namin sinusumite sa lahat ng mga kasapi ng pinagsamang komite ang ulat na ito upang ating aprubahan at isulong sa kabuuan ng Kongreso. Sa panahon ng pandemya, napapanahon po na mabigyan natin ng kaukulang aksyon ang mga problemang pangkalusugan. Ito po ay hindi lang para sa atin, bagkus ay para sa kinabukasan at kalusugan ng mga henerasyong magmamana ng hinaharap ng ating sambayanan. Maraming salamat po at magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. As an order to the members of the committee, if there are no objections, we will go point by point. Hindi na po natin di-discuss, hindi na po natin babasahin. But we will just read the key headings on the particular report. So if we may proceed, at kung maaari po sana, yung mga nasa Zoom can interject anytime. Pakisabi po sa ating COMSEC. And of course, those here in plenary can at any given time interject. So we will now proceed on the period of discussion and amendments. Pwede na po tayo magrekomenda na rin ng amendments.
Mr.
And
Chairman,
yes,
have we given the copies of these to all our members in these two committees?
yes, in fact, Deputy Speaker Fernandez, almost 1 week na nga, more than 1 week yung nabigyan natin itong kopyang to. Yung mga amendments na ngayon, very small changes. For example, the Honorable Kimbo included the legislation that she filed. And kasama rin dito, Congressman Kimbo, yung proposal that the committee adopt a amendment to the special provision of the budget, which we will support also. And I think it is very necessary now that we are in the budget process.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, yung pong mga bills that we have introduced, this will be prepared as well in the committee on rules.
Of course, yes, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sir,
Yes, Honorable Kimbo.
pinapasabi lang po ni Senior Deputy Minority Leader Janet Garin that she's joining us through Zoom.
Of course,
Wishes to be recognized.
yes, the Honorable Garin, of course, the Senior Deputy Minority Leader is recognized. Pero po ba sa Zoom? May narinig ako parang kanina nagsalita. Wala po. So if we may proceed.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
we can hear you. Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, before we proceed with the discussion,
Sorry, the Minority Leader, Carlos Paduano. Go ahead.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, before we proceed with the discussion on about the committee report, allow me, Mr. Chairman, to inform each and every member of this committee that there is a pending resolution pending in the Committee on Good Government since last year regarding same content and same intention in the investigation in aid of legislation with regards to anomalies, graft, and corruption in the PhilHealth. Mr. Chairman, this sixth resolution was filed last year pa, no? Pending in the House in the Committee on Good Government. Now, Mr. Chairman, to name the six House Reso, namely House Resolution 23, filed by Representative Arnie Teves, 26, filed by myself, House Resolution 126, filed by former Deputy Speaker El Rey Villafuerte, and House Resolution 186 by Senior Deputy Minority Leader Janet Garen, and House Resolution 238 filed by the former Minority Leader Rep. Bene Abante, and lastly, Mr. Chairman, House Resolution 246 filed by Representative B.H. Herrera D, Mr. Chairman. Now, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask the Honorable Committee what will be the decision of this committee since this House Reso was filed last year with the same content and intention to investigate anomalies in the PhilHealth, Mr. Chairman.
Maraming salamat, Honorable Minority Floor Leader Carlos Paduano. If you will allow, baka pwede na po nating isama na to as part of the report dahil nakalain niya naman po dito yung mga House Resolutions for investigation. And if there are no objections from the authors, including yourself, na kayo po ang isa sa mga principal author, isama po natin sa committee report ang binanggit niyong mga resolusyon ukol dito sa investigasyon sa PhilHealth.
Mr. Chairman,
Honorable Remulla.
the resolutions were referred to the Committee on Good Government alone, solely. But that being the case, and since we already have taken the full investigation of the matter being sought in the resolution, I move that we just integrate the said resolution referred to the Committee on Good Government to the Joint Committee because that is the appropriate thing to do in this case. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well,
I second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Coming from the senior majority floor leader, of the rules, I don't think there will be no problem in the integration. So there's a motion duly seconded, there being no objection. So we will adopt. Honorable Minority Leader Paduano.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yes, marami din po salamat.
Mr.
Buti po,
Chairman.
nabanggit niyo po rin yan dahil nga may mga miyembro rin tayong gustong magkaroon ng investigasyon and they were not part of this report. And with that, we will integrate it as part of the report. Maraming salamat, Honorable Paduano.
Let the record show that the said resolutions are part of the investigation of this joint committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Kasama na rin po dito yung kay Honorable Precious Hipolito. Again, of the Rules Committee. Meron din po siyang House Resolution number 1101. So we will also integrate it. So thank you for that. Are there any more discussions on this matter? If not, can we proceed? So una po, assertions and allegations, nandito na po yung mga resolution, tama-tama na po yung discussion natin dito. We will include the what was read by the Honorable Minority Leader and be form part of the report. So, number one, punta na po tayo sa mga discussions. The need for a mandatory and remedial legislation. Kung meron po kayong kopya niyan, ang dinagdag lang po diyan ay yung Act to address the social health insurance crisis and for other purposes. Ito naman po i-final ni Honorable Stella Kimbo. So yun lang naman po yung amendment diyan. If there are any more amendments, discussions. Honorable Kimbo, yung pong doon sa budget, Hindi nyo nilagay dito yung special provision?
Is it possible, Mr. Chair, to include it in this section? Because
I would
this
think
is the
so.
proper place.
Para dun sa, even in the BICAM or in the small committee, once the report is finished, we can submit to them.
Yes. So essentially, Mr. Chair, what this special provision does is to condition budget releases for PhilHealth on the submission of a management audit report detailing policies and reforms to control fraudulent practices. And number two, a fund viability plan, including policies and reforms to increase premium collection rates and minimize risk of deficits. And finally, an undertaking by PhilHealth to undergo a third-party review of its actuarial projections. So yun po yung tatlong conditions that will trigger releases for
So,
PhilHealth.
Ito po, nakabatay lang dyan, dun sa 70 billion contribution ng national government. So, niname ni Honorable Kimbo na bago mag-release yung 71 billion. And naintindihan ko si Congressman Kimbo kasi nung discussion, sinasabi na naman nila, if you recall, dun sa mga members, ipupush nila yung konsulta, yung check-up, and they're projecting about 55 billion again.
68 billion, Mr. Chair.
68 billion. So sabi namin, saan ang galing tong program na to? Bakit may ganyan na naman? So with this qualification dun sa provision ng budget, medyo mababantayan natin at mapoprotektahan ang pondo. So kung wala na po, yes? Are there any more points?
Mr. Chair,
Please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, yung concern ko lang po, si Ron Salo po ito, Mr. Chair.
Congressman Salo.
Yes, ang primary concern ko, Mr. Chair, with respect dun sa paragraph, page 10.
Congressman Salo, i-step natin.
Sorry.
Okay. So I'll recognize you dun sa page 10.
Okay, sorry. Pasensya
Okay.
na po.
So if I may proceed, number 2, irregularities in the implementation of all case rate system.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Honorable Kimbo.
just a typo on line 200 instead of was, it should be were.
Line 200 was instead of
Change to
was
were.
were. Okay. Meron pa ho ba? So ito pong all case rate system, ang study po nito is based on COA. From 2013 to 2018, lahat ng mga nakitang problema sa all case rate system. And if you look at the 2.1, ang nilagay po niya dito yung overpayments and underpayments. And the recommendation is the page 10. The Board of PhilHealth. Meron lang po akong dagdag dito. Baka dapat yung executive meron din dito kasi recommendatory lang naman sila eh.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Chairman.
Oo. Proposal for amendment lang na yung sa irregularities ng implementation kasi ay policy making body natin, yung board. Ang nag-execute nito yung executive division ng PhilHealth. Hindi ko nakikitaan na masama yung hangarin ng IRM ay ng ACR ng all case rate. Bagamat yung implementasyon nito doon nagkaroon ng problema. Kaya kung mababutihin ng ating joint committee ay matanggal sana sa recommendation for case filing ang members of the board at mapalitan ng members of the executive committee. Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Honorable Salo, go ahead.
thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This is exactly, I completely concur with the comments of Representative or Chairman Kuya Alvarado. Exactly, yun yung punto ko rin po na i-raise kasi lumalabas po based din sa mga pag-aaral, wala naman pong mali doon sa konsepto, doon sa pulisiya na all case rate. And exactly, ito po yung sinasabi po ng mga ekonomista na po natin na this is exactly how we're going to address inefficiencies as well as dun sa not to reward inefficiency among hospitals or health facilities. Kaya ang mahalaga po talaga, maganda yung pulisiya, pero ang tanong nga po dito kung na-implement ba ito ng mas maayos. And lumalabas, pero dito sa as worded, ang recommendation po ay ang filean, yung nag-craft po ng policy, hindi po yung mga nag-i-implement. So I completely concur with the recommendation of Chairman C. Alvarado na dapat mas maganda ang ating rekomendasyon ay tingnan, busisiin at filean yung mga nag-execute, nag-i-implement po ng pulisiyang ito. Sapagkat klaro rin naman po doon na based doon sa policy, kailangan may regular na updating to ensure na yung case rate would be consistent kung ano yung requirement doon sa market. And yet, ang tanong ba doon, nagagawa ba ito? Hindi. Ngayon, kung hindi man ito nagawa, hindi yung pulisiya ang may mali. Ang may pulisiya yung mga nag-execute po nito. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Salo, Honorable Alvarado. Ikaklaro ko lang po, no, yung policy kasi, ginagawa ng Execom, ibinibigay sa board, aprobahan ng board, on the basis of that, i-implement ulit ng Execom. Ngayon po, from 2013, sinasabi na nga, may mga naging problema. Doon po sa policy mismo. For example, pag sinabi bang 15,000 ang pneumonia, ito ba'y hindi inaaprubahan ng board? Di ba ho board din ang nag-approve dito? And for the remaining years, for the past several years after 2013, hindi ko alam kung nakikita nila, pero I'm sure naririnig nila yung mga COA reports. So kaya nga po, I agree dun sa point na hiwalay dapat ang board sa Execom. Pero totally ba absuelto ang board for this policy approval? Yun po ang tanong ko sa komite. Is it,
Sir Chair?
Yes, Honorable Salo.
Yes, ang tanong nga po natin dito, maganda nga ba yung pulisiya o hindi? Ngayon, nire-review ba ito hindi is a different issue. At the same time, itong kanilang in-approve na pulisiya, ang sinasabi po natin ay magkaroon po ng all case rate. Ngayon, kung ang recommendation po ng committee po natin ay kasuhan po yung mga nag-approve po nun, ang concern ko ano po yung maging epekto po nito ngayon. So ibig sabihin po ba nito, syempre yung mga membro po ng kasalukuyan doon sa PhilHealth Board, lahat sila mag-iisip ngayon, itutuloy pa ba nila itong all case rate o hindi? Ibig sabihin ba nito, babalik tayo doon sa original na paper service. Number two, dito sa recommendation po, pagdating po sa filing of administrative cases, tatandaan po natin, the highest administrative penalty that could be given to an individual is removal from service. Ang tanong doon sa mga nag-approve na yun, meron po ba na present pa rin po sa kasalukuyan? Number two, with respect to the criminal aspect, ang binabanggit naman po ng 309, paragraph E, it's causing undue injury to any party. At the same time, with respect to manifest partiality, evident bad faith, or gross inexcusable negligence. Ang tanong doon, may prima facie evidence ba that those particular matters have been na-commit po ba yon? Manifest partiality to whom? Kasi pagdating sa ACR, all case rate, lahat naman po yan, pare-pareho po ang babayaran, whether public or private. So whose partiality ang pinag-uusapan po natin? Mukhang hindi po siya papasok doon sa criteria na sinet din mismo ng batas.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you very much, Mr.
Honorable
Chair.
Alvarado.
ayoko pong kumanta ng parang choir kay Congressman Gonzalo, pero ako po ay nagko-concur at naniniwala doon sa kanyang pahayag. At kung titingnan po natin, Mr. Chair, yung title pa lamang, Irregularities in the Implementation of All Case Rate. Hindi po naniniwala ang kinatawang ito at ng lalawigan ng Bulacan na sa implementation ay nagkaroon ng pagkakasala ang members of the board. Kung saan ang nag-implement po nito ay ang executive na ng PhilHealth, Mr. Chair.
Honorable Remulla.
Mr. Chairman, ang ating committee report ay batay sa ating narinig na lahat ng paliwanag ng mga naging saksi sa ating mga pandinig. ang ating isinulat sa ating committee report tungkol sa all case rate ay ang abuso na nangyari sa habang ginagamit ang all case rate ng mga doktor at mga ospital. Kaya hindi naman salungat ito sa sinasabi ni Congressman Salo. Ang kanya lang ay saan ba ito itinuturo itong bagay na ito. Ang sinasabi ng komite ay ginamit ang all case rate bilang instrumento ng anomalya o kaya bilang instrumento ng pagkuha ng pera mula sa PhilHealth na hindi naman nararapat. Kagaya niyan, sa simula pa lang ng ating pagdinig, na ipaliwanag na natin na kahit na mas mababa ang singil dapat, tumataas ang singil sapagkat ang case rate ay nagsasabing mas mataas ang bayad. Kaya may unjust enrichment, may pagpapayaman sa maling tao na nangyayari dahil sa sistemang ito. Ang tinuturo naman ng ating committee report ay ang hindi pagiging perpektong instrumento ng all case rate para ho sa pagpapatupad ng ating PhilHealth coverage. Yun naman ang mahalaga, Mr. Chairman. Kung meron ho silang gustong sabihin na iba tungkol dito, sana sinabi na nung araw pa. Pero ngayon pong ituturo yan, maliwanag na ho yung ating committee report sa aking palagay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Honorable Fernandez.
In addition to that, Mr. Chairman, if I will cite some example that was discussed during the investigation, yung iba pong mga ospital na na-identify na mas maraming cases of anomalies. Mr. Chair, those are the hospital that was given a lot of funds sa ating pong interim reimbursement mechanism. And in that case, Mr. Chairman, since ang Execom saka ang PhilHealth Board ay isa lamang po yung kanilang composition ng kanilang members, nakita po natin sa investigation natin that there is somehow a connivance between the Execom, the PhilHealth Board, and at the same time yung mga different hospitals. Katulad nung nabanggit ni Congressman Stella Kimbo sa kanyang pag-aaral na mas maraming mga ospital ang nakikinabang doon sa tinatawag natin na all case rate with regards to sa distribution ng ating interim reimbursement mechanism. Kaya I think, Mr. Chairman, nararapat lamang that we were saying a while ago na separate yung composition ng Execom at ng board. Nang sa gano'n, maiwasan yung ganitong mga klase ng sitwasyon.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Honorable Kimbo.
Mr. Chair, our report mentions a possible violation of Section 2I of RA 7875, which refers to providing effective stewardship and funds management. But if you think about it, as indicated on page 9, there were 22% of the case rates resulted in overpayment and 78% resulted in underpayment. So if you look at the net effect of the underpayments and the overpayments, it would seem that there are more underpayments compared to the overpayments. So what I'm saying here is that if you wish to point out violations of Section 2I of RA 7875, it seems to be inconsistent, right? We have pointed out that the all case rate is poorly implemented, resulting in the use of such payment system as a platform for fraud, right? But then particularly with respect to fund management, one can argue that overall, there were more underpayments than overpayments. So, so I would tend to agree with Rep. Ron Salo that maybe perhaps we should review the recommendation.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Just to quick reply to Honorable Kimbo. Ito kasing nakalagay dito doon sa income and losses. hindi naman natin to establish pa eh. There could have been upcasing in fact on these particular cases. Pwedeng, sinabi lang nila, nagkaroon ng critical pneumonia, nagkaroon ng severe pneumonia. Pero ito lang ang kinuha, ito yung ginastos. So pagka inayos mo yun, lalabas, may overpayment, may underpayment. Yung report, sasabit natin to for further study. Pero ako, ito lang naman yung pinupunto ko rito sa usaping to. Pag ikaw nag-member ng board, and I have been a member of a board of many government agencies, meron tayong responsibilidad na dapat ayusin yung ating ahensyang pinaglilingkuran. Naniniwala ako may mga policy na pag in-approve mo, dahil nirekomenda ng eksekutibo, bulag ka doon sa mga nangyayari. Kunyari, doon sa housing nung araw, pag sinabing gagawa tayo ng bahay at ang rate ay 15,000 per square meter, inaprubahan mo yun, eh yung pala 5,000 lang per square meter, sa tingin ko naging instrumento ka na ng nakawan. At dapat maging responsable ka pag ikaw umupo dito sa mga board na to. Ang tanong ngayon, ang inihemplo niya dito ay COVID. Pero ang tanong from 2013 to 2018, sunod-sunod yung sinasabi ng COA, daang-daang milyon ang nawawala. Hindi ba dapat naging responsable ng miyembro ng mga board yung naging problema batay dun sa pag-aaral? Pero tama kayo. Ang paniwala ko naman, hindi naman sila dapat pareho ng kaso ng executive. Hindi naman dapat sila i-lump together. Kasi doon sa pag-aaral at implementasyon, eh maaaring bulag sila at nila alam yung nagiging mga pangyayari. Pero from 2013 to 2020 at patuloy itong mga nagiging problema ng nakawan, eh palagay ko na may problema na tayo. At dapat, ang magiging members ng board mula ngayon hanggang sa susunod, eh talagang mag-ingat at bantayan yung pondo ng PhilHealth na gusto naman nating lahat at objektibo ng ginagawa nating report at pagdidinig dito sa PhilHealth. Honorable Rimulya.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman. Ang all case rate kasi po sa ating narinig sa mga tumistigo sa atin, ang siyang nagbigay na motibo sa mga doktor at mga ospital na dayain ng sistema ng PhilHealth. Diyan po ay nakikita sa all case rate. Ang intention po ng all case rate natin, sabi nga ng PhilHealth, ay para mas maganda, mas madaling bayaran ang mga claim, mas mabilis makwenta. Ngunit yan na rin po ang naging mitya ng pandarambong sa pondo ng PhilHealth. Ayun po yung pinag-iingatan natin dito. Kaya ho natin tinuturo ang kamalian ng all case rate system. Ano po ba ho ang pinakamalaking ebidensya dyan? Kundi yung anomalya sa katarata na 2008 pa lang ho ay alam na ng buong Pilipinas na napakalaki ng anomalya sa katarata. 16,000 ang bawat isang mata. Ang ibig sabihin, nagkaka-overpayment talaga ang case rate kasi nagiging attractive na gawing racket ng mga doktor at mga ospital itong bagay na ito. Kaya pinag-iingat po natin ang PhilHealth na pag-aralan ang all case rate bilang isang instrumento ng fund management sapagkat baka ito na rin ang mitya na magdadala ng pagkaubos ng pondo ng PhilHealth. Malinaw naman po yun eh.
Chairman
Mr.
Ibarado.
Chairman, opo. Ako po ay naniniwala doon sa pinahayag po ng ating mga kasama, lalong-lalo na ni Congressman Remulla. Bagamat Mr. Chair, kanina po ay ako po ay nagpanukala na amyendahan yung nakalagay na sa personalities involved ay tanggalin po yung members of the board. At iyan po ay pinangalawahan kanina ni Congressman Palo. Maaari ko po bang malaman, Mr. Chair, kung ang mga sumunod po ba na pahayag na nanggaling sa ating mga kasama ay maaaring maibilang na objections doon po sa ating pahayag, Mr. Chair, na hindi naman hindi po direktang pagkakamali yung espiritu at pagkakagawa ng all case rate. Sa pananaw po ng inyong abang lingkod, totoong baka sila po ay naging mitsa ng paggawa ng kalokohan ng mga sindikato na namumunini sa loob ng PhilHealth. Bagamat yung espiritu po ng all case rate ay ginawa para po sa kabutihan ng ating mga miyembro ng PhilHealth. Yung pong mga gumawa ng kalokohan, nag-abuso na sindikato, kagaya na po ng mga sindikato sa Katarata, yung nangyari po kay Congressman Argel Kabatbat na sindikato sa high blood o kakaibang sakit ng dugo, iyan po, Mr. Chair, ay pinaniniwalaan kong beyond na o higit na doon sa nasasakupan ng members of the board, lalong-lalo na ng mga ex-officio na naghangad lamang ng kabutihan para doon sa mga miyembro ng PhilHealth, kaya po nagkaroon ng all case rate implementation, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Mr. Chair,
I don't want,
Before
Chair.
we debate, just for order, may actual motion si Honorable Alvarado, no? Nag-second si Honorable Salo. So I will
Mr.
allow
Chair.
further discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Chair,
Before that, meron ba mo sa Zoom?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead. Congressman Fortune, is that you?
yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Honorable Fortune.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Gusto ko lang mag-share ng my own insights no on this issue. I believe, Mr. Chair, that we cannot like remove right away recommendations for filing of appropriate actions against members of the board. I agree with the chair when he said na maaring iba ang degree ng pagkakamali ng members of the board as compared to those who are members of the executive committee that are actually involved in the implementation of the case rate system. Sa tagal kasi, Mr. Chair, na nandyan ang all case rate system, and over time, it should be impossible for the board not to have seen the anomalies in the implementation of the all case rate system. And it appears that the members of the board did not initiate any action that should correct the implementation of the all case rate system. So, as a policy making body, kung nakikita natin na may problema, bagamat tama yun na maganda naman yung adhikain sa pag-implement ng all case rate system. Pero in the course of the implementation, may nakikita mga anomalies dito at nalulugi ang PhilHealth in the course of the implementation. The members of the board should have acted on it right away, and probably introduced the necessary reforms in order to address these anomalies, irregularities in the implementation of the all case rate system. In other words, Mr. Chair, pwedeng ang maging recommendation natin ay tingnan ang possibility of filing appropriate actions against members of the board. Pero removing them from the list ng pwede nating bigyan ng kaukulang kaso, sa tingin ko mali yun, Mr. Chair. Para kasing tinatanggal natin right away ang possible liabilities nila doon sa ating recommendation. So my suggestion, Mr. Chair, is to retain them there, not necessarily to face the same cases as those of the members of the executive committee, but definitely there should be a recommendation to at least consider the filing of appropriate actions against members of the board.
Thank you, Honorable Fortune.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
Honorable Fortune. Honorable Deputy Speaker Fernandez.
Mr. Chairman, aside from that, this will set a bad precedent na lahat na lang po na magiging member ng any board will have no accountability and culpability. And I think it is incumbent upon us to set an example, considering that matagal na panahon na yung all case rate ay nasa kanilang board. They should have acted upon this. And that's the reason why, Mr. Chairman, sabi ko kanina, before I object on the motion of Kuya Jonathan, I think it's also just right to all the members of this committee to set the record straight na sila yung member ng board and they have the responsibility they have accountability. At dapat yun ay mapakita natin sa decision natin dito sa committee hearing.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Mr. Chair, pwede pa ba magsalita?
Yes, go ahead. Honorable Kimbo.
Mr. Chair, siguro hahayaan naman natin ang ombudsman to determine probable cause. Ombudsman na nandito. Alright. Mag-determine kung merong strong enough basis to file cases. So hayaan na lang muna natin sila. But having said that, since nabanggit ko po kanina na mukhang mas matindi ang problema ng underpayments compared to overpayments, sa aking palagay, in fact, nakatipid pa ang PhilHealth, pero ang tingin kong kasalanan nila is pagdating po sa mandato nila, which is to provide financial risk protection. Kasi ibig sabihin, sa kanilang pagtitipid because of underpayments, ang nangyari naman po dyan ay hindi nabigyan ng sapat na financial risk protection or insurance coverage ang ating mga kababayan. Kaya sa tingin ko po, Mr. Chair, if I may add, dito po sa recommendation, pwede po ba na lang natin dagdagan yung review of the all-case rate system? Kasi po, baka nakalimutan po natin, napaka-importante because this is the current policy. Baka kailangan talaga ng review of the ACR system, especially po yung setting of case rates and particularly na rin po yung balance billing policy na adopted sa private hospitals. Because for this to be a genuine case payment system, dapat po yung no balance billing policy is adopted in both public and private hospitals.
Thank you, Honorable Kimbo. Dun sa last part natin sa 2013-2018 COA report, nandun siya sa review. So thank you for that. Meron pa bang reaction before we move to a vote?
Mr. Chair, pwede pa ba magsalita?
Honorable Salo, pwede nang mag-divide kung okay lang sa'yo.
1 minute lang po siguro kung po pwede.
Sige, please.
Okay. Maraming salamat muli, Mr. Chair. So ang sinasabi ko lang naman po dito, kagaya po ng nabanggit na po kanina, basically iba naman po yung pulisiya doon sa implementation. Tama naman po kayo, lahat po nagsabi na dapat yung members ng board dire-review po ito. Pero ang tanong po doon, ang premise po noon, iisa po yung members ng board, pare-pareho po sila all throughout the years. When in fact, iba-iba naman po yung umuupo po dyan. That's a reality. So ang tanong po doon, may mali ba doon sa pulisiya in the first place? Na nakikita naman po natin, dalawa naman po yung schools of thought. Nung unang-una, prior to this particular all case rate, pay for service. At sinasabi po ng lahat po, based din sa literature, na yung pay for service ay maling proseso dahil mas mahal ang binabayaran ng gobyerno pagdating po doon because we reward inefficiencies actually. So I understand, inadapt po ito ng PhilHealth because also of certain recommendations from certain consultants and adopted also from experiences of other countries. So ang tanong dito, kung para sa pag-adapt po nila, may liability ba in the first place? Kasi dito sa recommendation po natin, it points out to certain liabilities, criminal and/or administrative. So ang tanong po doon, for simply adopting that particular policy, did they committed an infraction of against the law? Yun lang po yung punto ko po, Mr. Chair, at yun po yung sinasabi po natin na tama po kayo na dapat ginagawa po nila yung role po nila, pero doon sa pag-adapt po ng pulisiya na yon, ang tanong, may illegality po ba? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, Honorable Salo. For the record,
Mr. Chair.
wala po tayong sinasabing fee for service. That is not what is the committee is adopting. Ang ginaano po natin ay yung kaso doon sa all case rates and the review of the all case rate as stated by Honorable Kimbo and the members of the panel.
Mr. Chair.
Reaction before we vote.
Mr. Chair. Kung Kaloy. Zarate, Mr. Chair.
Zarate is recognized. Congressman Zarate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hindi na ako mag-video dahil mahina ang ating bandwidth. I agree with the Chair na kailangan i-maintain na lang itong findings na yung board ay talagang pwedeng may liability dito sa usapin na ito. Magkaiba na, tama, I agree with the Representative Fortune, magkaiba ang level ng possible liability nitong mga officials that we identified dito sa ating report. Tama rin yung sinabi ni Representative Salo, yung members ng board magkaiba naman sa iba't mga taon. But hindi ibig sabihin na wala, halimbawa yung kasalukuyang board, after naipakita na nung pumalit sila at pag-aralan nila na nagkaroon ng maling implementasyon,
granting for the sake of argument that this policy is not wrong, no, per se. Pero nakita nila na sa implementasyon ay merong mali rito at wala silang ginawa, at the very least, Mr. Chair, no, sa tingin ko, they will be liable for acts of omission, no, dahil wala silang ginawa. So, yun lang po ang gusto kong maibahagi. No? Hindi pwedeng alisin yung liability ng board dahil may nakita tayong anomalya or may problema dito sa implementation nitong kasong ito, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, last note lang, Mr. Chair.
Okay, there's a motion duly seconded. We've heard the arguments for and against the motion. Those in favor say aye. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, clarification.
Those against say nay.
Nay.
Okay, yung pabor dun okay, ang motion no is to, okay, we now go to nominal voting.
Mr. Chair, can we repeat the motion, Mr. Chair? Just for clarification.
Mr. Chair, ang parliamentary status po natin kanina ay nagkaroon po ako ng motion. It was duly
Mr. Chair, hindi marinig.
and previously objected. Maraming objection po na natanggap, Mr. Chair. Kaya sana po, Mr. Chair, ngayon ay magkaroon tayo ng nominal voting para po doon sa objection, doon po sa aking previous motion kanina pa po, Mr.
Yung
Chair.
previous motion po to make it clear na wag na ho natin gawing liable yung mga board members ng PhilHealth sa kahit anong nangyari dito sa all case rate. Okay. O yung executive committee lang. Ang sa akin po, kung papaliliwanag ko, boboto na ako ngayon kung nominal voting na ba tayo. No. I object to the motion.
You previously objected.
Yes, and
yes.
so let my vote be recorded that I am against the motion of Congressman Alvarado.
Mr. Chair, can you
Okay, we will now proceed to the roll call of members.
Mr. Chairman, before you
The
proceed,
Honorable Dan Fernandez, before we proceed,
point
can
of
we
order,
just
Mr.
call,
Chairman, point of
what
order.
is your point of order?
Mr. Chairman, yung
Mr.
pagboboto,
Chairman, when voting is ongoing, there should be no more interruption.
Yes, I agree.
So thank you. So we will now proceed to,
Sa akin lang, Mr. Chairman, klaro lang po kung ano yung pagbobotohan.
Pare,
That's it.
wala na.
no, it was already restated, the motion. If I can call on the members of the committee. So isa-isahin po natin yung mga nasa Zoom. Public accounts, kindly proceed, Comsec.
Mr. Chair, from the Committee on Public Accounts, we have
Ang hina.
the Honorable
Mr. Chair, hindi namin naririnig, hindi namin naiintindihan.
Hindi ko marinig dito sa Zoom.
Mr. Chair, hindi naririnig, Mr. Chair.
Okay, pakilakas siguro Comsec yung boses para marinig ng mga
1 minute
membro.
suspension, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, hindi rin namin naintindihan kung ano yung yes and no.
Honorable Federico Haresco Jr. The Honorable Onyx Casologo, may we know you.
Mr. Chair, we don't hear anything, Mr. Chair. Naririnig nyo, Ron?
Walang sound.
Walang
Sound, hindi maririnig eh.
Oo.
Ito magbabasa ng ating mga members.
Mr. Chair, wala po kami naririnig.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Mr. Chair, we don't hear you from the.
Mr. Chairman, since we are in the difficulty in our technical system, can we move for a 1 minute suspension?
Because suspended.
Check mic. 1, 2, 3, 4. Tignan niyo po sa sim ninyo. Okay na? Check mic. 1, 2, 3, 4. Malak ka sa... Check. 1, 2. Ayan.
At
Mic test.
Hindi eh. Sa system. Reboot. Dito? Can I turn off here? Check. Meron na? May konti pa? Wala na. Ayun na.
static siya.
Delete naman yung ano na yun. Delayed yung cellphone. Hello. Wala. Delayed. Meron. Dinig naman. Ayun na. Narinig. Pero... Wala static siya. Check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay?
Okay. Session resume. We will proceed with the voting. Pwede yung mag-electronic voting lang yung mga members. It will be announced by the
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
point of order.
Mr. Chairman, during the break, Congressman Alvarado stated that this motion will be repeated for every topic that we discussed in the committee report. In other words, his motion is really to absolve all members of the PhilHealth Board of any liability whatsoever in the conduct of the affairs of PhilHealth. And we might as well, since the voting failed earlier due to technical matters, let us have a restated motion from Congressman Alvarado so that we can vote on his motion to absolve the PhilHealth Board members. Omnibus motion to absolve all PhilHealth Board members of any responsibility that can be attached to them by the committee.
Honorable Alvarado.
Mr. Chair, yan pong motion na ibinigay ko kanina ay motion na uulitin ko para sa lahat ng kaso dito sa PhilHealth na wag po masama ang members of the board, kasama po ang previous board. Yung members of the board po, hindi po kasama dyan yung president, yung executive vice president, at karamihan po doon sa mga tao na ating inimbitahan sa usapin po sa PhilHealth. Yung pong mga tao nga inimbitahan natin sa Kongreso at humarap sa atin, karamihan naman po ay sinasang-ayunan ko na maisama po sa rekomendasyon natin na magkaroon ng case filing upang malinaw po nila at malinis po nila ang kanilang mga pangalan kung talaga ba itong malinis o sila naman ay mapatawan ng parusa kung talaga nga sila ay nagkasala. Kaya gaya po ng sinabi ni Congressman Remulla, ako po ay nagmumungkahi ng omnibus motion ng removal ng members of the board sa mga kaso po o sa case recommendations po na ipapataw natin ngayong araw na ito. Mr. Chair.
Maraming salamat, Honorable Alvarado. So bilang ang status ng ating ang parliamentary status ng ating pagdinig ngayon, meron ka ng withdrawal ng previous motion at nilalagay mo na omnibus motion para doon sa point by point na iba pang mga kaso ay wag nang isama ang PhilHealth Board. So that is now the restated case duly seconded by Honorable Alvarado. Before we proceed, I will allow the Honorable Kimbo.
Well, just a quick clarification. In my case, Mr. Chair, my vote for this particular motion would vary per issue, in which case that omnibus motion does not work. But for my particular situation,
I think,
so
Mr. Chairman, if that's the case,
okay.
you have to vote yes.
No, it's okay because ang ano naman dito, Honorable Kimbo, omnibus motion to, yung iba gusto mong isama, yung iba ayaw mong isama. So, ang vote niya would be no. No. Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Honorable Fortuna.
Yes, Mr. Chair. After we vote on this, because since this is about an omnibus motion, paano pag dumating tayo dun sa ibang issues? Are we not going to vote again whether to still include the members of the board or not in the recommendations for filing of cases? Since this is an omnibus motion already, Mr. Chair. And I agree with the Honorable Kimbo, Mr. Chair. We might have a problem in the voting because some might agree to involve the members of the board in certain cases but not in some cases, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, ang motion ko po ay omnibus motion para sa lahat ng mga kaso na maaaring isampa sa kanila. At kung po mayroong isa mang membro na nagnanais na sa isa man sa mga maaaring maging kaso ay maabsuelto yung members of the board, ay maaari po nilang gawin pero hindi na po ako yung magmumungkahi nun kasi naimungkahi ko na po yung omnibus motion ko ngayong oras na ito. Kaya po, puwera sa akin, ibang tao na po ang maaaring mag-motion noon, Mr. Chair.
Maraming salamat sa pagkaklaro, Honorable Alvarado.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Honorable.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Ang maaari kasi maging problema nito, Mr. Chair, maaring iilan ay pabor na tanggalin sila sa lahat ng kaso. Yung iba naman ay tutol dito. But once ma-adapt itong omnibus motion, for example, Mr. Chair, ma-absorb na rin sila doon sa ibang kaso na maayong ibang members might want them to be involved in the other cases, Mr. Chair. So the omnibus would cover everything, Mr. Chair, and we would not have a chance already to have them included in the recommendations for filing cases in the other cases, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman,
As stated by the Honorable Alvarado, dito sa yung kanya is a motion, omnibus motion, pero hindi naman hinihinto yung iba sa particular na kaso na magkaroon ng restatement of motion. So we will take it as it is. Kung meron kayong nakikita doon sa ating pag-uusap na doon sa ibang kaso na sa tingin nyo, kunyari, nanalo yung kay Honorable Alvarado na walang kaso lahat, pero nakita nyo sa isang kaso ay kailangan, then we can vote again on that, based on that motion. On that point,
Mr. Chair, medyo may conflict, Mr. Chair.
isa created more.
That means,
just
ang kaso wala na po sila.
point of order, may motion na po talaga eh. No, we cannot argue for or against it. We can only vote for it. Pero ang sinasabi ko nga ho as chair, sa particular na case, pagka ito'y nakita nyo, at any rate kung ano man mangyari dun sa motion ni Honorable Alvarado, magbutuhan ulit tayo. But it will not be anymore, no motion will be entertained coming from the Honorable Alvarado based on his motion. So, let's put order on this, magbutuhan na po tayo, and proceed on the cases. I will entertain the other motions.
Clarification lang, Mr. Chair.
Honorable Salo, please, if we can proceed with the vote, the omnibus vote.
Clarification lang po sana, Mr. Chair, kasi ang motion po i-absolve po silang lahat. Pero ang pinag-usapan po natin, ang pinanggalingan po nito, dito sa filing ng with respect to the ACR, sa all case rate. So yun po yung confusing po sa akin kasi tama po yung sinasabi po nila Congressman
Salo, kung binasa niyo po yung ating report, tama po yun. Iba-iba po yung may mga kaso na involve ang board. So, ang motion ni Honorable Alvarado, sa lahat ng kaso, wag na silang isama. But again, kung nakikita nyo later on, even if you vote for or against it, and you want to raise another motion, contrary to the motion of the Honorable Alvarado, then you can do that. Okay? So, if we may proceed with the vote, nagbobotohan na po ba? Okay, so we already have the motion duly objected and the vote is in. May I know first, before we continue, those who would want to vote in this committee. Honorable Fernandez?
I vote no.
I vote no.
And I vote no.
Vote no. And si Honorable no. I'm sorry, Honorable Alvarado, you cannot vote because you are also a chair of this.
Pwede po akong bumoto sa public accounts. Vice Chairman mo ako kaya may boto ako doon. Bawal akong bumoto sa Blue Ribbon.
Sige,
Mr. Chair.
Salamat po doon. Kung ganun po ang kaso, dahil Vice Chairman mo rin ako, I vote no as your Vice Chairman.
Nakadagdag ka pa.
Thank you po.
I vote yes as your Vice Chairman.
Comsec Attorney Canso, pwede pong basahin from
I
the
vote no, Mr. Chair.
committee. Yes, Honorable Fortune, thank you. Honorable Attorney Canso.
Mr. Chair, my vote is no.
Thank you, Honorable
Zarate.
Zarate.
Mr. Chair, I vote no. Congressman Kabatbat.
Thank you, Congressman. Nananawagan po kami sa mga members doon po sa boto ninyo sa Viber or sa chat, no? The Zoom chat, we can entertain the votes para kung makita natin yung voting.
Mr. Chair, Congressman Edcas, I vote no.
Thank you, Kong Edcas.
Mr. Chair.
Kong Jimenez, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. My vote is no.
Salamat po.
Thank you po.
Ron
Thank you.
Salo. My vote is yes.
Thank you, Kong Salo. Kong Aresco? Kong Barsaga? No. Habang may nagbobotohan tayo, if we can proceed, habang hinihintay natin yung boto. Okay. Okay. So, whatever will be the final outcome of the vote, ang pagkakaisa pa natin dito, in all the, sa lahat po ng mga kaso na recommended dito sa ating report, hiwalay ang board at ang EXICOM. I think there's no debate on that. Hiwalay ang executive committee at saka ang board, subject to style. Comsec, can you please, in the final form of the report, doon po sa pinaka-pinal, magkaroon po tayo ng paghiwalay ng pag-file ng kaso o violation ng board at ng executive committee. Okay, we proceed now while waiting for the vote on the IRM, Interim Reimbursement Mechanism, page 11. Meron po bang mga comments? Wala po? So, pasok po. Yes, Honorable Kimbo.
On page 18.
Teka ma'am, sandali yun. 3.1, abuses in the implementation of the IRM. Nandito na po, wala ko tayong changes dyan. Tapos 3.2, IRM allocations, excessive related to estimated cost. COVID-19 hospitalizations, 3.2, wala po. 3.3, IRM funds for COVID-19 cases. Okay. 3.4, upcasing of cases. Okay, yan. The Philippine Red Cross. Page 18, may comment po si Honorable Kimbo. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, on line 721, it reads, the MOA is disadvantageous to the government for the following reasons, and there's a listing of reasons here. I'd like to add one more reason, which is that the per unit charge, as indicated in the MOA, is 3,500 pesos, which actually exceeds the approved benefit payment for COVID tests, which is at 3,409. So meron po siyang disparity ng 91 pesos. So mas mataas po ang based on the MOA for amounting to 91 pesos. So for 1 million tests, that could be as much as 91 million pesos.
Okay. There are no objections to the amendment of the Honorable Kimbo. We will note that in the final report, COMSEC. Kindly include in the report the amendment as stipulated by the Honorable Kimbo. So again, yung recommendations po dito, no, from page 18 to 2020. So may mga kaso po dito, General Morales, Mr. De Jesus, Dr. Vargas, yung Siaco, Del Rosario. Tapos nandito na naman din yung, of course, si Pukalan, and then the members of the board. So, ito naman wala tayong debate dito, no? Ihiwalay po ulit natin to as to the liability and culpability of the members of the board. So, hintayin na lang po natin yung botohan dun sa motion as to what would that be. Okay na po ba, Comsec? Wala pa. Ongoing pa rin? Okay, so
Walang boto yung apat. Hindi naman. Apat did not participate.
so may we know from the Committee on Good Government, Public Accountability, Attorney Marivic.
Mr. Chair, sa Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability, otherwise known as the Blue Ribbon Committee, dadalawa lang po kaming bumoto ng yes at 6 po ang bumoto ng no, yung 4 po ay hindi bumoto.
Attorney Francis, Committee on Public Accounts.
Mr. Chair, ang bumoto po ng no sa public accounts, Honorable Defensor, Honorable Alvarado, at yes po si Honorable Salo. Sorry sir. Yes po si Honorable Alvarado. At sa ex-official po, Zarate no, and DS Fernandez no. Kimbo no, and Bremulia no.
Mr. Chair, I voted no as well.
Yes, the Honorable Fortune voted. The Honorable Fortune voted. The Honorable Barsaga, Ebcas, and Jimenez. Okay, so okay na yan. So okay, with the motion duly seconded, objected to, in our nominal voting, ang boto po ng komite, isama yung board sa mga kaso. Pero ang pagkakaisa din naman po natin, even those who voted no, ay hiwalay naman dapat ang kaso. Okay? So we proceed dun sa case nitong, kung wala na po dito, din po dito ang officials and board members of healthcare institutions na tinitingnan na may culpability dito sa kasong to, sa IRM. Kung okay na po yan, we proceed now to the next issue, IT and similar issues. Page 21, 4.1. So ito po yung mga kaso na nilagay niya, 4.1. If there are no questions, objections, we proceed now to recommendations na po. Again, based on the recommendations, hiwalay po dapat ang board at saka po yung ating executive. Meron pong violations na stipulated dito, particular yung RA 11127 or Registration of Payment System of Operators. So if we can kindly again separate the members of the board relative to the executive committee. Okay, next, 5.1, perpetual succor. Page 25. So ito po, ang kaso dito, again, paglilinaw lang po dun sa ating mga kababayan, ito yung pag-reverse ng Court of Appeals decision na may penalty na hindi in-implement. And nakita natin dito may violation ng batas. At ang recommendation po dito, again, filing of a case. Hiwalay din po natin yung board natin, including the from the Exicom. Iwalay po natin to. In fact, para lang klaro, for the record, medyo naging unfair din naman talaga sa board eh. Dahil yung legal nila was telling the board at the time, sila Attorney Pucalan, if you recall, na kaya po yan nagkaroon tayo ng contempt at naipakulong natin dito dahil sinasabi niya sa board, pwedeng i-reverse ang decision. So having said that, proceed to Cardinal's Post, 5.2, page 2. Ang kaso po na ito, ang compromise agreement. From 240 million, nagkaroon ng compromise agreement based on the arbitration of the court na 70 million pesos. So 170 million pesos ang walang pondo batay dito sa kasong ito. At kasama rin po dito, again, iwalay natin ang board of directors and yung Exicom. Pero kasama dito yung HMI as part of the case. Page 31. Ang kaso lang po natin dito ay syndicated staffa. If I may, dapat po dito ilagay din natin yung kaso ng plunder. Pag-aralan ang pag-file ng plunder case batay sa pondong nawala na 170 million pesos. So ito po documented, nasa PhilHealth po yan, documented sa court, makikita po natin yan, and very clear po dito. Medina General Hospital. Page 32. Okay, page 32. Ang recommendation din po dito, is the same as the recommendations on perpetual succor. May violation ng Code of Conduct of Public Officials, the graft and corrupt practices law, and the violation of the Charter of PhilHealth. Kung wala pong objection, we proceed. Accenture case, 5.4, page 34. To the members, kung meron po kayong gustong balikan at any time, wala akong problema. Okay, before we discuss the Accenture, Honorable King was recognized.
Mr. Chair, may pahabol lang po si Kong Janet Garin dahil hindi daw siya marinig. Pwede daw balikan ang IRM. Meron siyang proposed amendment which is that the justification of utilization of the funds should be based on actual utilization because there are certain sectors na hindi naman dapat chargeable to PhilHealth ang kanilang COVID testing halimbawa or hospitalization. For example, under Bayanihan 1. Kasama po dyan yung mga frontliners natin, pati yung swabbers, no? So based on Bayanihan 1, hindi dapat chargeable to PhilHealth. So kung pwede daw isama yon as an amendment doon po sa section on IRM.
There is a proposal by the Honorable Senior Deputy Minority Floor Leader. Kung wala naman pong objection, tingin ko naman po, tama naman din po yung amendment niya. So we will adopt, COMSEC. Kindly note the amendment of the Senior Deputy Minority Floor Leader. Deputy Speaker Fernandez.
No, I was about to second the motion, but it's okay.
Thank you, Honorable Fernandez. Accenture, 5.4. So ito po yung kaso naman na nagbayad yung Accenture at yung pondong dapat kontribusyon ay nanakaw. So ang recommendation po dito, kung tingnan niyo po yung mga facts, klaro po yan. In the recommendation na sinabi dito, ang DOJ NBI ipursue yung kaso rito at dapat malaman natin paano nawala yung pondo, paano nanakaw, sinong responsable sa bangko, in this case Metro Bank, Citibank was also involved, doon nakuha yung manager's check, and also the Accenture employee, including PhilHealth employees. So again, doon sa PhilHealth Board, iwalay po natin yung kasong to kasi nagkaroon ng compromise eh. Ang point lang naman dito sa compromise, ang sinasabi, bakit tayo biglang pumasok sa compromise? Hindi naman natin pondong nawala yun. It was a private transaction at that point na nanakaw, hindi po mapapasok yung pondo sa loob ng PhilHealth. 5.5, WellMed Dialysis and Laboratory Center. Ito po, malinaw yung facts dito. Hanggang ngayon, hindi pa po napafile yung mga kaso ukol dito, maging sa loob ng PhilHealth. And meron pong recommendation to file PhilHealth officials with a violation of RA 3019, which is the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Law. Again, 3019. Again, meron din yung board dito. Siguro yung ihiwalay din po natin from the Exicom. 5.6, Bibron Avitum and the Balanga Rural Bank. Ito po yung nawalang pondo ulit, katulad ng Accenture. So, if there's no debate, I think klaro din po naman, iwalay natin yung board and sa Exicom and to file the necessary case and to pursue the case for that matter kasi hindi naman po ito na pupursue kundi lang po natin na i-open ulit. So, dalawa po yan, Accenture, tsaka itong Bibron at tsaka yung Balanga Rural Bank. Okay, 5.7. Nung po tayong mag-hearing, ang sinabi nila magkakaroon ng amnesty. Hindi ho natapos tong board resolution na to at nagkataon naman nagkaroon na tayo ng hearing na panahong yun. I do not know if the board resolution was signed. At that time, sabi nila, pinapaikot pa rin po nila. So again, may case dapat dito ang Exicom in particular because alam niyo ho, itong, the total amount that is part of the amnesty, if I'm not mistaken, is ilan po ba? 68 billion pesos. Lahat ng denied claims gusto lang ipasok sa amnesty, 68,000 po to, with an average of 10,000 per claim. So ito po yung nahinto ng ating komite during hearing natin. So again, iba po yung Exicom, although I don't think the board would be liable on this kasi hindi pa naman natapos nila. At tingin ko dito sa legal ng PhilHealth na naging problema. Next, Dr. Mark Dennis Mengita. Ito po yung kaso ni Congressman Kabatbat. So very clear po yung case ni Congressman Kabatbat. Clearly stipulated po yung nilagay niya ditong mga facts and basis for the case. Ang recommendation po dito, 20 counts violation of the revised penal code. Meron po PRC violation, plunder law, including the Anti-Money Laundering Act and the Charter of PhilHealth. Meron din po mga personalities involved in the filing of the case. Before we proceed to approve this, Honorable Kabatbat, would you like to say something?
No, Mr. Chair. Lahat naman ng kailangan sabihin nasa committee report na. So I hope our colleagues will also approve.
So thank you for that. Kung wala na po, we proceed to item 7. Ito na po yung kanina pinag-uusapan, Honorable Kimbo, yung Adverse Commission on Audit Annual Audit Reports from 2013 to 2018. Marami po nagtatanong bakit 2018 huminto. Kasi po yung 2018, dyan po huminto yung COA dahil sabi nila ayaw papasukin sa computerization. Pero this year, nakuha na naman natin during the budget deliberations, pero hindi ho natin naklaro talaga yung kaso dito. But in the statements of Dr. Vargas during the hearings, sinabi na po niya at that stage already, they're looking at 3 billion na mga overpayments. So at any rate, ito po yung 2013-2018 and the recommendations are very clear. again, ito yung pumasok yung PhilHealth Board and the PhilHealth Board and some of the healthcare institutions. So if there are no questions on this, Honorable Stelly, you wanted to recommend earlier?
My earlier recommendation, Mr. Chair, was to include a review of the all case rate system, which I thought would be included in part 2. But if this is the more appropriate place, of course, I would withdraw my motion and just follow that suggestion.
Well, Honorable Kimbo, we can't, to emphasize your point, pwede natin ilagay sa parehong punto yun na calling for a review, and I agree with that. If there are no objections, we will put that in the report. At kasama po dito, mabigyan natin ng recommendation na magkaroon talaga ng audit report, third-party audit. Besides COA, si Atty. Garan, hopefully mabigyan siya ng poder para magkaroon siya ng third-party audit. Magmula ng 2013 kasi puro random audit po yan eh. So dapat magkaroon ng mas malalim na pag-aaral. 7.1, ito po yung discrepancy sa collection. Kasi yung PhilHealth may accredited collecting agents, tapos meron po siyang mga accredited collecting agents, meron din po siyang tinatawag na PhilHealth agents receipts. Hindi po nagtutugma. For example, yung recorded collections, 53 billion, pero ang nandun sa Treasury Department, 55 billion. May discrepancy na 1.6 billion. So isa to sa mga nakita natin during the deliberations. Tapos yun nga, ang recommendation dito ay yung mga PhilHealth collecting agents, yung mga agent receipts at yung mga ay dapat kasuhan kung ano man nangyari, kung ano man ang pagkukulang dito sa ating pondo. Kasama din dito yung OFWs particular. Kasi di ba ang lumalabas from 1.6 billion, 1.8 billion ay 300 million na lang. So bumagsak na talaga. This was the case presented by the Honorable Fernandez. So ito po. 7.2, ito yung kaso ni Honorable Abante. Yung accreditation fees dinistribute bilang allowance and bonuses. So klaro naman din po to, recorded po to sa COA, recorded din po to sa PhilHealth, and may recommendation din for filing of cases. Again, hiwalay po natin yung board member kasi nagkaroon ng approval yung board to the EXICOM. 7.3, competence and eligibility of PhilHealth executives and officials. So klaro po yan, kailangan iayusin yung lalot ngayon na may pagkakataon si Atty. Dante Queran na talagang ayusin yung mga ang mga competence and eligibility posisyon ng bawat maging opisyalis ng PhilHealth. 7.4, yes, Honorable Kimbo.
Pwede po bang idagdag dito na kung pwede sana makipagsangguni ang CSC sa Actuarial Society? Kasi isang problema din natin would be the competence required para po sa position ng actuary.
Duly noted, as stated by the Honorable Kimbo, kailangan din po natin talaga para maiayos natin yung mga studies on this. But just for the sake of argument, sana po hindi na rin talaga individual yung kunin ni Atty. Garan, but more so an established, let's say, actuarial company doing actuarial services for insurance companies para talaga magkaroon ng maayos na pag-aaral. Baka, as we have said and we have heard during the hearings, talaga pong magulo yung nagiging pondo ng PhilHealth at yung pag-aaral nila. 7.4, Chairman De La Rosa Bala, yung provision niya to share information to Congress, noted in this report, at matay din po rito, may censure tayong ginawa, fair warning to any future statements and actions coming from the Civil Service Commission. So, in conclusion, ito na po yung mga bawat case, may mga kaso po tayo, iba-ibang nature ng cases nila. At ito po naman ay ilalagak natin sa Department of Justice for further study unless there are other recommendations coming from this committee. So, very clear po yung mga conclusion natin from page 61 to page 64. There are several changes in this, particularly ito pong COA. Kasi nga, ang nakikita po natin dito sa COA na parang ang nangyari, tuloy-tuloy yung naging violation, hindi rin nahinto, given that there is an audit agency. So parang ang panawagan dito is to conduct a pre-audit on this matter. At any rate, it will be up to COA to look into this, but we are stating before them that there should be reform in handling PhilHealth. Kasi pagka tuloy-tuloy naman yung problema, tuloy-tuloy yung pagkawala ng pondo, magkakaroon tayo ng sitwasyon na katulad nito na naubos ang pondo ng PhilHealth. So if there are no questions, clarifications on the whole report, yun lang po, meron po tayo sa legislation, in-approve na natin yun dun sa OFW. Now, if there are no objections, yung po kay Congressman Stella, na i-final at yung i-final po natin yung PhilHealth Crisis Act to give emergency powers to the President. We hope that pagbigay natin ng poder sa ating Pangulo, batay sa approval ng committee nito at aprobahan ng plenaryo ng mababang kapulungan ng ating Kongreso, ay magkaroon ng sapat na poder ang ating Pangulo at ang Pangulo ng Presidente ng PhilHealth na talagang maisaayos, mabigyan siya ng sapat na poder para mag-hire, mag-fire, mag-reorganize, kunin ang sapat na tulong mula sa mga legal, actuarial, financial na pag-aaral sa PhilHealth. Kaya po natin ginawa to dahil sa sitwasyon nito ni Grant sa ngayon, wala siyang katulong. Wala siyang suporta na makukuha. And we hope that with this crisis, PhilHealth Crisis Act, it could be done. Ang isang tanong, can PhilHealth be privatized given this crisis act? Yes, if that is the direction of the President. Pwede bang semi-private na managed by private sector pero government pa rin? Yes, it can be done. So with that, if there are questions coming from other members.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Honorable Zarate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Generally, I'm agreeable with the joint committee report. But I have to state my reservation, especially on the last paragraph of the report, where there is a recommendation for outsourcing. Dahil sa tingin ko, Mr. Chair, ang problema talaga ay ang buong sistema ng PhilHealth. Outsourcing may just be transferring the problem to the private sector, and in fact will lead to privatization of PhilHealth probably. But this representation believes na hindi yon ang solusyon sa problema ng ating healthcare system sa buong bansa, lalong-lalo na yung ating public healthcare system. So I'm just registering that reservation doon sa huling paragraph ng ating report, Mr. Chair. But I agree with the findings, especially the recommendation na sampahan ng kaso yung mga tiwaling opisyal, dahil ito naman yung isang purpose ng inihain nating panukalang resolusyon. Salamat, Mr. Chair.
Salamat, Honorable Zarate. Honorable Zarate, for the record, I share yung iyong observation tungkol dito. Ang akin lamang, magkaroon ng flexibility ang ating gobyerno. In fact, kung meron mga outsourcing, sana sa ngayon, temporary ang magawa. Kunyari, actuarial. Nakita mo naman, Honorable Zarate, naging problema natin nung pinapakinggan natin yung actuarial. Sa tingin ko, kailangan talaga i-outsource muna. Temporarily, hindi permanently. So I agree with you. Yun lang sa batas na to at sa report, para lang binibigyan natin ng flexibility temporarily yung PhilHealth. In the final act of the executive, which will be submitted to Congress, for example po, napalakas na nila at sinabi nilang, let's say, privatize, at pwede po tayong mag-object doon, pwede naman din po. Pero as of, for the meantime, nagkaroon lang po tayo ng flexibility call dito. But for the record, Honorable Zarate, pareho po tayo ng pananaw ukol dito sa isyong to. Honorable Kimbo.
Salamat, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So with that, if there are no objections to the bill, do I hear a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, with all these tedious committee hearings that we have conducted for so many months, and also the technical working group that were created by this joint committee hearing, I move that we adopted this committee report. I so move, Mr. Chairman. Subject to the amendments that have been discussed a while ago. I so move,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Bagamat ako po ay may counting reservation doon po sa aking amendment na natalo kanina, ay sinusuportahan ko po itong committee report na dapat talagang sampahan ng kaso yung mga taong iniisip natin na nagkaroon ng problema, lalong-lalo na ito pong PhilHealth ay pera ng taong bayan na dapat iniingatan natin. At Mr. Chairman, I second the motion of Deputy Speaker Fernandez.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, with the motion of the Honorable Fernandez, kasama po sa motion na yan, ang binanggit ni Honorable Fernandez na subject to style, no? Subject to style, not on substance, ay integrate natin yung mga suggestions. Ang legislation po na inaipasok dito is number 1, yung OFW, number 2, yung pagtanggal natin ng pagkakaroon nila ng mandatory payment. Pangalawa po dito, yung PhilHealth Crisis Act. Ito ay integrated din sa batas na final ni Honorable Kimbo. And number 3, yung special provisions of the budget. We will be adopting the recommendation of the Honorable Kimbo, subject to style, to the committee report so that it will be submitted. So ito po ay hindi lamang report.
Amendments on the Universal Healthcare Act.
Yes, Section 10 of the Universal Healthcare Act. So hindi lamang to report ng pag-file ng kaso, pero kasama na rin po dito ay 3 legislasyon na itinutulak natin na binanggit ko kanina. OFW, yung pong ating Crisis Act or yung Emergency Powers, at pangatlo ay yung amendment at special provisions ng budget, which we all support. So with that, there is a motion, duly seconded, there being no objection. We approve the committee report on the PhilHealth investigation, including the prescribed legislation on this matter. Motion duly seconded. There being objection, the motion is approved. On the part of the Committee on Public Accounts.
Sa parte po ng Blue Ribbon Committee o Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability, inaaprobahan po namin ang committee report na ito.
Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng mga miyembro ng ating Committee ng Public Accounts, Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability. Sa inyo po lahat, next week po, ang sisimulan na po natin yung panawagan ng ating Pangulo na dapat by December yung mga telco natin maayos na. So by next week, we will call for a committee hearing. Magkaroon po tayo ng briefing on the improvement of telecom signals in our country, which includes the NTC, the ICT, at yung mga private proponents po ng telco. So sa inyo po lahat, maraming salamat.
Mr. Chair, before we adjourn, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the Committee on Public Accounts and the Committee on Good Government for a job well done. After all the many hearings that you have conducted, during the pandemic, we were able to come out with a good committee report. And with that, Mr. Chair, ay mabuhay ang 18th Congress. Maraming salamat, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much, Honorable Fernandez, Honorable Kimbo. Chairman Alvarado.
Mr. Chair, ako ay nagpapasalamat sa ating mga miyembro, sa lahat po ng umattend ngayong araw na ito dito sa Batasang Pambansa. Kasama na po sa lahat ng members ng Good Government and Public Accountability o Blue Ribbon Committee na nasa Zoom at yung iba po nanonood sa Facebook, sa ating mga kababayan, sa patuloy niyo po na pagsubaybay at pakikialam. Mas mabuti po na alam natin kung ano ang nangyayari dito sa ating bansa para hindi po tayo nagugulat. At sa lahat po ng mga tiwali, umasa po kayo na hahabulin po namin kayo sa Committee ng Good Government and Public Accountability, kasama po ang Committee ng Public Accounts.
Maraming salamat po sa lahat, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank former Speaker Alan Cayetano for allowing us to conduct these hearings, and of course Speaker Lord Velasco, in fact, to have had this scheduled meeting today. Supposedly po si Speaker Velasco ay magbibigay na statement niya on this particular issue, but he's traveling from Marinduque, papauwi na ng Manila. But we would like to thank our leaders of the House for giving us this opportunity. And of course, next week po, batay na rin sa pag-uusap, sisimulan na po natin yung hearing sa PhilCo. On the part of the Committee of Public Accounts, this hearing is adjourned.
Sa parte po ng Blue Ribbon Committee, this committee hearing is adjourned.